joining us. Okay, so the webinar is being recorded, Zoom is saying. And yeah, we had a really good turnout the last time, and we had a good conversation on how important this work is, to see our Pueblo women in farming and gardening and the food and seed sovereignty movements that I think that are happening across, Turtle Island and across everywhere. And yeah, I think in a lot of spaces, we have this space to talk about what farming means and what planting the seeds mean and gardening means and how to do it, the practical side of it. But we often don't get time to come together to talk about the interpersonal and the personal relations and struggles and challenges that we have in this work. So that's the kind of space that I wanted to cultivate for us tonight, because we don't really get to be together to have these conversations. And they're so important, they're connected to all of the things we are facing as Pueblo communities, as Native communities, everything from climate change, climate crisis, to water crisis, to the health of our communities and how we see our communities moving forward in the future for our communities. So yeah, thank you all for being here tonight. As I mentioned before, we'll wait maybe about 3 more minutes to wait for our other panelists to join in if they can. And if they cannot, then we'll get started here shortly. But yeah, if you want to, Delava, if you want to start introducing our panelists, maybe we can have you introduce Janice and Theresa since they are here. That would be great. Thank you.
Yes. So hello, everyone. I am Delavai Cook. I am the Environmental Justice Program Manager for Pueblo United, and I am here to help facilitate this webinar with Chastity. And I'll introduce Theresa Pasqual. She's from Acoma, Pueblo. Theresa Pasqual is a member of Acoma, Pueblo. She was raised by parents and extended family who raised livestock and tended large family fields, orchards, and gardens. Ms. Pasqual now tends fields and gardens passed on to her by her parents and hopes to inspire others to see traditional agriculture practices as a solution to challenges her community faces. Theresa, if you want to turn on your video and wave to everyone so they can see who you are. Awesome. Welcome. And then we have Janice Lucero from Cotton Blossoms Garden. Janice Lucero is from Isleta, Pueblo. Farming has always been a part of my life, but this year in 2021, it became my life. I became more serious in becoming more self-sustainable and providing healthy foods for my family, friends, and community. She farms on inherited ancestral land from her late paternal grandparents, Tata Joe Di Lucero and Nana Lupita Lucero. Her garden also kept her sober. She just celebrated her 2nd year of sobriety. Woo, good Janice. After years of self-sabotage and bad choices, her body was telling her it was time to stop drinking. For years, she played into her own self-pity and became a victim, a vicious cycle of blaming, denying, and judgment. She was lost in this world and trying to feel accepted in love. She was trying to search for fulfillment in things that had no value. She had lost everything at one point, her precious children, her house, her car, and job. There was no other way but to face herself. Be true to thy own self, the famous words of William Shakespeare. One of the hardest things to do is admit the truth, no matter how ugly, cringy, or scary it is. By allowing herself to be vulnerable, she was able to admit her truth. She had to change her mindset and thought process. She's learning about herself, healing through the land, and believing in herself. It is her goal to expand farming and produce more healthy vegetables by building a loop house for winter crops and installing a wash rinse station with a shaded area. Her intention is to create a safe space for learning, healing, sharing knowledge, and reconnecting with the land. She finds her peace, healing, and happiness in the garden. It is the most humbling experience, and she feels so grounded. Nature is our greatest teacher, and she will forever be a student. Working for a bigger cause, the Heart of the Dragonfly Farm, Pueblo Resurgence, and Cotton Blossom Gardens work together to create space for Indigenous self-sustaining systems. We build community through mountain projects, focusing on the reconnection to our land, self, and community. Learn more about our work, how you can be involved, and ways to support our cause by visiting us on social media. And welcome, Janice. You want to give yourself a wave? Great. Awesome. Now we're just waiting for Lillian.
If folks want to put in the chat where they're chiming in from, please do. Welcome, welcome everyone. I hope everyone's staying cool. It's very hot. It's like 96 right now in Acoma. Maybe put how hot it is where you are right now. Welcome everyone. We will have a chance for Q&A towards the end of our time here together, but I have a list of questions that I would like to ask the panelists, so hopefully we get to that. Okay, well, we will definitely keep an eye out for Lillian and be at the
Should I introduce them? And then when they come on, you guys already have a background of them. Okay.
Definitely.
So we have another panelist coming in named Lillian Hill. She's from Hopi, from the village of Kikwutnuvi, and brings to her new roles decades of work and contributions to the Indigenous food sovereignty movement in the Southwest region and beyond. She founded the Hopi Tusqua Permaculture Institute in 2004 as a way to develop community leadership and provide opportunities for the Hopi community to develop sustainable solutions to the problems that exist on the reservation. And has led the Institute since as an executive director. In 2001, Lillian also founded the Black Mesa Water Coalition, an organization working to address energy and water exploitation on the Navajo and Hopi reservations. Lillian has traveled to Italy, Africa, India, Tajikistan, New Zealand, and Mexico, learning, sharing her work, and promoting Indigenous self-determination. She has studied at the North American School of Natural Building, received her Bachelor of Science from Northern Arizona University, NAU, in Applied Indigenous Studies, and is currently pursuing her master's degree in Sustainable Communities, also at NAU. In 2015, Lillian was awarded the Agricultural Humanitarian Year Award by the Justin Willey Foundation and has received fellowships from the Skoll Foundation as well as the Castanea Fellowship. Lillian joined NAFSA's Leadership Council last fall. Another panelist that we have on today is Beata Sosi Pena from Santa Clara Pueblo and El Rito, New Mexico. She is certified as an infant massage instructor, as a developmental specialist, one advanced, an educator, bachelor's in arts and an associate's in arts, a full spectrum doula and lactation counselor, and an Indigenous sustainable design permaculture. She is a Pueblo representative for the New Mexico Governor's Task Force on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives, serving a second term and serves on 2 local community boards. She was also a founding board member of Breath in My Heart Birthplace. The realities of living next to a nuclear weapons complex called her into environmental health and reproductive justice work and advocacy for over a decade. She does this work in honor of her roles as a Tewa mother, partner, auntie, seed keeper, artist, farmer, and relative to all beings. So those are the other 2 panelists who will be joining us, hopefully sooner than later. All right, up to you, Chast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for reading those and introducing our panelists. Please just shout out to me if you see them pop in. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started with our conversation. Again, welcome everyone. I have been thinking about what it would look like to have a lot of, the people that I know and that I'm mentored by, mostly Pueblo women in the same space, and thinking about, the future of our communities when it comes to farming, because I think we hold a lot of that knowledge, but at the same time, we're also just learning. We're always in this space of learning. So I'm just honored to be with these mentors and get a chance to talk with them. So my first question that I want to ask you all is, what are the roles in our communities as Pueblo women farmers? And if you want to just raise your hand, if you want to answer first, that would be good, and then I can call on you. Or you could just start talking. Up to you.
Well, good evening, Chastity, and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Theresa Pasqual, and I'm happy to join you all. And it's great to see that you have so many. I was just looking at the participant list. So many interested individuals who want to hear this important discussion. And so I thank Tiwa Women United for asking me to join in this discussion. I happen to be joining you all while I am on travel. And so I normally would be joining you from my field or garden in the background. But what you see behind me is some of the yellow corn that I harvested last year's crop of corn. I think for me here at the Pueblo of Acoma, the thing that's important to me, especially from our community, is the role that women tending fields and gardens plays in our community. In Acoma Pueblo, we are matrilineal. But what does that really mean for us? Women are given the responsibility to tend to the family plots of land, to the family home, to nurture those things that are important to us. And by doing so, also raise our children in the same ways of stewarding and caring for land and for home. We have the practice of placing our children in the field by means of placing their afterbirth, their umbilical cords into those fields in which they will tend and steward throughout their lifetime. There is the practice as marriages occur that young men are given the responsibility to tend their wives' fields, the family fields, the family plots as part of that responsibility as well. And so there's a whole relationship that is instilled in us, not only with land and women as caretakers, but this sense of reciprocity as our relationships with other families occurs through marriage. As godchildren may assist their godparents, as nieces and nephews, also fulfill that responsibility to help extended family with the caretaking of those fields. But for me, really, it is because I come from a family of women, two sisters, and we were all brought up in that tradition of tending the fields and the gardens that our parents also planted in and cared for. And that's something that, even though we've moved on to our very modern lives, that each one of us While I tend the family fields and gardens now, I know that each one of my sisters has worked in their own way to take care of fruit trees or small home gardens, wherever they may be. And that continues to be an extension of that larger practice of tending those family fields. And so it's a very strong way to connect to those values and those practices that our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors did such a long time ago. So I think in terms of that, that's where I hope to continue those traditions for not only the women in my family, but for all of our family members.
All right. Hinamam kima harimba. Natataikam takipaf. Harkia mawambai. Good evening, everybody. My name is Khan Blossom Garden, as Khan Blossom Takipaf. I'm from the Pueblo of Isleta. I'm very grateful to be here tonight. Thank you to Tiwa Women United for having me. And I think that's really a great question. And I really like what Theresa had to share. I think that what she shared was really spot on. And I feel the same. It was our women that cultivated plants. They cultivated plants for food. They cultivated for medicine, for healing and nourishment. And I think, you know, just for me, I grew up with my paternal grandparents. They helped raise me. And I learned a lot just by watching. I learned a lot by my grandmother, Nana Mapa, Lupita. And, you know, every step of the way, there was a lesson, there was a teaching, and she had so much patience and she had so much love that it was easy for me to ask her. It was easy for me to, you know, just ask her for that help. And I think our roles as women is to be those women, to continue that love, to continue to have that patience, to continue to listen. We are the sacredness of women. We are the givers of life. Women are. And so when we see ourselves in community, we see ourselves sometimes not being valued to the full extent of who we truly are as women and how sacred we are, because again, we are the givers of life. Our mother Earth continuously provides for us in this way. She births every single day. We are just seeds. That's what we are. And so when I think of our roles, I think about my grandmother, I think about my aunties as well, because they helped raise me. I lost my mom when I was 8 months old. And so I had a community of aunties raise me. Women that would step in, you know, I had an aunt that nursed me when I was little, you know. So I think we play so many different roles as women that we just step in and we do what we need to do to continue with our lives, with the continuation of the ways of life, whether that's nurturing, whether that's providing, whether that's healing. We have all of these beautiful, the plant life that we were given through our mother. That's our connection. And I see our roles continuing to be those women, to teach and again, to be the birther of life, to continuously give life where we see a lot of destruction, you know, and there's blessing in these lives. The seeds that pop up is a blessing. Even the weeds that we see outside is a blessing. And so when we start to see how Mother Nature creates and births, we then give that respect and we give that acknowledgement, and we also give that just, you know, connection to who she is, because we can see that within ourselves as women. And so I really love that question, Hadgam. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll add to you both for answering those questions profoundly. I think a big part of this work as a young person has been about seeing how the connection, between how I figure out personal things, how I figure out how to continue on with life is really taught, as you all said, beautifully in the field, and the people that teach us in the fields, in the gardens. And yeah, so I think that connection is very special. And the ways that you answered the last question lead me into my next thinking, which is, we're in this place in time where community healing and community work and collective healing is really important. We have been impacted by COVID. We have been impacted by the shortages of food, the shortages of medicine. We have been impacted by, the ways that violence comes out in our communities when we are in this high level of stress. And we have been impacted by patriarchy, right? And the ways that we experience the lack of value towards the matrilineal ways of knowing in our communities. And so those are the things that I've been sitting with in ways, those are the things that I feel like we need to heal from. And so my question to you all is, what ways do we support and lead collective and community healing in this work as Pueblo women farmers? I hope that question makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't.
No, it makes absolute sense, Chastity. I think that gardens and fields, tending to those things can be places of healing. We know that through this pandemic, I know personally that my own anxiety reached a level that I have never felt before, with all of the uncertainty, the things that we were experiencing firsthand in seeing the sheer panic of people as store shelves were being wiped clean. The anxiety of the unknown, because we didn't know anything at that point, at the early stages, at the height of the pandemic, about the virus and who could catch it or how you could catch it. There was so much anxiety. And I know that for a lot of people, that shift in having to deal with so much of the unknown created really a mental health crisis for many of our people in tribal communities, where we're already in a situation where we don't have access to adequate mental health care to begin with. And there are two things that helped me personally through the pandemic, and that was that physical exertion by the act of walking, which I found very therapeutic, just to walk long distances to clear my mind. But also we know that during the pandemic, there was, and I recall this actually looking on a Facebook memory one evening, where we knew that our African-American brothers and sisters were facing such injustices, racial hatred, and even death. And during the pandemic, I myself felt helpless. What could I do? How could I express my frustrations, my anger? And the act of physically being in the field and pulling weeds, of being so angry and being in the field and just yanking out weeds and tending to my garden in that way was very healing for me. It was in that way to place my frustrations back into the earth and let our mother, let the land, let the spirits take that frustration, that anger, that anxiety from me and turn it into something beautiful. It allowed me points in which to contemplate these much larger, deeper thoughts, a place that I could unburden myself from those anxieties as we move through the pandemic. But I also find that in my own youth, it was in the gardens and in the fields that I received the most advice. If I had an issue, a question, a thought that I could give to my parents, there happens to be a garden wall near my fields. And I remember sitting on that wall with my father or my mother and having them give me that wisdom, that advice, their guidance. It's a practice I still do today with my own nieces and nephews, or provide that guidance to them, to reflect, to give thought to. And even with my own partner, when we have our difficult conversations or difficult decisions to make, or anger to release, if we've had an argument, it's often in the garden or in the field that we release those things, say what needs to be said, to make amends and find. So I think that those places are very healing and can provide those opportunities to so many of us. And in essence, I guess, our creator, our Mother Earth, she really is the best therapist for all of our anxieties, our hurts, our thoughts, our sorrows. So that's how that, at that moment in time, how the fields and gardens really not only helped me, but I think provided that space for so many others who were gardening and tending fields during that time.
Definitely. It's so funny because, you know, when you hear somebody talk and you're like, yes, you're like, that's exactly it, right? So I really do agree with what Theresa has to say. And, you know, really how we could support collective and community healing with our work as farmers and seed collectors is the journey really is within, it's actually within yourself. You know, this is just coming from me. I had to really take a good look at myself and really see who I really was. And that was hard. I didn't have the best upbringing, and I'm not blaming anybody because I made those choices. Some of those choices were mine. But the healing really was like, it was like church. You know, the garden for me was like church. It was like I was going somewhere so that I could sit there and I could talk and I can ask for help. That's what that was for me. I was going through so much. There was a time in my life that I was spiraling with alcohol. I suffered from alcoholism for a while, you know, just because of the trauma that I had in my life. And I didn't really have outlets, and I suppressed all of this through different things, just through my own ego, through work. I was a really big workaholic. And it wasn't until that, you know, I had to take the journey within. I had to look within myself and I had to say, okay, who am I? Who am I? Who am I really? Who is this person that was brought here? You know, because I really felt like I had this purpose and I felt this urgency, you know, 2 years ago to start this garden and to start farming. And that was really in all honesty, that was like the real truth of who I really was. But that's the truth of where I needed to be at that time, and who I really was this lost soul at that time. I was trying to find was trying to find love. I was trying to find acceptance in so many other different things that I didn't even look within. And so when I started to work at my garden, when I started to do the work there, I really started to understand. I started to understand, everything started to make sense to me. It made sense because I understand that I was running away from who I truly was, that I had lost my connection, to our creator. I lost the connection to Mother Earth. I lost my connection with a lot of these sacred things that are there for us, and all we have to do is ask. And so for me, it was a journey that I took. That was a hard journey, but I'm happy that I took this journey because I learned so much about myself. And one thing I can say is have compassion, have true compassion for yourself. We are not born perfect. We are not perfect, but we are here to learn. We are here to evolve. And sometimes we will make the same mistakes, but don't beat yourself up, because the more we beat ourselves up, the more things we add, this, the oppression, the suppression, all these things, that's all conformity. And when we let conformity go and we allow ourselves to be us, and you say, I'm free, I'm no longer these things, stop putting labels on yourself. I put labels on myself for so long. And when this healing work came for me, it was like an onion. It was like this onion that I was just peeling layers out of. And I was just like, man, I had that there, and it's, sometimes it's hard to look at ourselves, but I think if you can help yourself, you can help others, because you have taken the step to help yourself, that one step to understand yourself. Let's not place judgment. We see that often a lot in our communities. We want to place judgment. Oh, so-and-so this, oh, so-and-so that. There was a lot of judgment on me when I wasn't living the life that I chose to live. And stop for 1 second. Hear one story. We don't all walk in the same shoes, but be open to learn, be open to listen, and be open to share, because you might have something, or that person might have something, a piece of wisdom, a smile, a gesture that could heal you somehow, some way. And the same thing with our work in the garden and the farm. Touch the soil, pray, smell the air, listen to the birds. We are actually supposed to be nature's kinship. Even though we are kinship to each other, where is the kinship to nature? We are nature's kinship. And once we figure that out and find that out, then we can reconnect to all the harmonious elements that are here for us, that we tap into, because I believe our ancestors, they didn't see things physically. They meditated. There was prayer, there was song, there was ceremony. There was so many different things that they were able to get these visions, because they understood that we are a spiritual being. Thank you.
Thank you both for sharing. Like just sitting here on the verge of tears, because it's so important and so real what both of you have shared. And going through this journey again as a young person and someone who has struggled in the past year a lot, with trauma and my own health. It was true. I just had lunch today with my dad, who was telling me about this certain song that I can sing to myself in my head when I'm out in the garden, with just that deep kinship and that deep prayer, right, for the calling of rain, and the calling for health, and the calling for just this understanding of what it all means sometimes. And just going through this journey of, I remember when I first got sick, my sister had told me, she was like, when you start feeling better, do what your heart wants to do what makes you happy. And I just sat with that for a long time, and I'm just like, it's this, it's this work, it's being in the garden and being in the field. And yeah, that's the healing, I think, is like what you were saying, Janice, is that it's a lot of your own personal journey and a lot of reflection. And so, yeah, just thank you for sharing what you shared. And it prepares me for my next question or my next thinking, which is, we both shared a lot about how this work leads to how we continue to take care of our community, continue to take care of our families in this teaching, but also, carrying a lot of trauma and carrying a lot of, that work to want to heal community through this work. And I've been sitting with how do we support each other as Pueblo women, but also how do those around us support us in this work. Earlier, Janice, you shared in our personal conversation that your dad helps you a lot in the field. And this year I've been farming with my grandpa, and it's a whole nother world when you have someone out there with you. And so, yeah, what does that support look like from community, from family, and from each other? And what can we do more of to support each other?
Yeah, I think I think there are a couple of ways. I know that there are a lot of young people who are interested in farming or gardening and don't know where or how to get started. And one of those ways is just to engage or have conversation with farmers in your community and getting to know them, getting to learn what they plant and how they are tending their fields. Are they small gardens? Are they field gardens? Are they dry irrigating? Are they irrigating using runoff water? How are they tending to their fields and gardens? And oftentimes those conversations lead to other conversations that where you I've had situations where I've had young people who say, Naya, I want to farm or I want to garden, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to get started. I don't have any seeds. What am I going to plant? And those are conversations that I enjoy because I know that someone's genuine interest and desire is there. And I think as the older adults, we get, we're happy because that's also a prayer too that we have as we tend our fields and our gardens, that we pray for more farmers. We pray for more of our young people to be interested in those types of things, to help tend the fields. And so sharing seed stock is one way that we can encourage young farmers, young women in our community to plant and to garden, and to offer up our fields and our gardens as classrooms to others. I had a niece this year who, out of the blue, I completely did not expect that my cousin's daughter would send me a message asking, Auntie, I really want to connect with fields and farms, gardens at home, because I recognize while I know how to plant things in my own backyard, I've never planted at home, and that's a whole nother process. And so when we tilled our fields, getting them ready this spring, I invited her to come out and learn how we plant traditionally in Acoma. She brought her mother, my own cousin, and we've never planted together before. So I had a lot of help this year. So offering up our gardens, our fields as classrooms, and being open to teach others, whether it's our extended family or friends or young people in general, is one way that we can generate new interest. I think the other thing that I have received even at my age, is the encouragement of other farmers, older farmers. And we always, now with technology, we have the ability to capture the images like the one behind me. And when in Acoma, now that the community knows that I do harvest what I plant, it's always the question of, what did you plant this year? That anticipation, the excitement of what did you plant this year? What are you expecting to harvest? And just engaging and encouraging people to continue to plant and tend gardens. That can be a way to support one another, offering help. Sometimes people will say, well, my melons didn't come out that great this year, or my corn, they grew, but they didn't grow tall enough. And figuring out, the technical aspects of gardening is one way. Another way we can provide support to one another, because as much as any farmer will tell you that there's nothing given when you plant a field or a garden. That planting a field and garden is probably about 90% prayer, 10% hope, and maybe somewhere in there a little bit of luck, as my father would say. But it's not exact. It requires our faith, our traditional faith, when the rains aren't coming as expected. There's science in being able to read your soil and know what you should plant this year versus other types of crops. It's knowing how to maximize your ground cover in order to ensure that things like squash and beans get shielded from the sun. So all of that knowledge and that wisdom does no one any good if you keep it to yourself. And so we too, as women farmers and gardeners, also have to be willing to extend that knowledge onto others. And so the fields and the gardens become the biggest teacher to us, but we in turn, in that cycle of reciprocity, also have to extend that teaching on to others who desire to farm and garden. So that's how I see that we can support each other in this work.
That was beautifully said. Yes, I just, it's hard sometimes to ask for help. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very, in the past I was like, man, I'm not gonna ask for help, but just this way of life, our way of life, being out there it's not for one person. It's humility, really. You talk about being humble. You really have to be humble because you don't know everything. I don't know everything. There's still, a lot of things. Yesterday, my dad was like, come here, or the other day, he was like, come here, I'm gonna, show you how to properly, because I was like, I had the hoe and I was like, just kind of like, kind of scraping on top, and he saw me and he's like, I'm gonna show you how to use this, right? And I'm like, okay, as old as you think that you are, be open to learning. And I think that was my thing. We don't know everything. Our parents, they have that experience. Our grandparents, they have that experience. They have that wisdom. And that was how it was. The elders transmitted wisdom to us, to the young. That's how it was back in the day, and it still is through our words. Our words have so much weight. It has so much meaning. Our Tiwa words, the words that we speak. And to hear those words, that's where I you know, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be on my A game because I know my dad's going to test me. That's like one thing, right? I know he's going to be like, here's a small little test. And he'll test me about what I'm supposed to do, you know, with, we just installed a water pump, a water gas pump. And so, you know, he was testing me on that. And then also just some of our words, you know, some of the words that we have, a rake, you know, of course I know ho, you know, and just words that I don't hear often, but he'll say things and I pick those up. And, you know, that's where I really feel, again, the humbleness comes in, because when you're humble, you know, you're able to see things for what it is. You don't know everything. So you're more, hopefully you're like me and you'll just ask, because that's just who I am. I'm always curious. So I ask a lot of questions. And so that's my thing. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, us as women, we want to play all these different roles. We have children sometimes, we have work, we have full-time jobs, sometimes we have parents to take care of. And so it's hard sometimes just to ask for that, hey, you know, sister, right? Or brother, can you help me? Can you give us a help? Or can you give me a hand? And I think, you know, just ask for help. It's hard for me too, and I'm learning how to do that more so, especially now as I get older, especially now that I, you know, need help sometimes in the field. You know, I have to swallow that pride. I have to really check myself and be like, okay, you know, is this an ego thing, or is this, you know, what is this? And it's just really trying to figure out, you know, the balance of who I am and how I can, you know, ask for this help, because again, sometimes I struggle with that. I struggle with asking. And so if you're like me, you know, just really try to use your voice, really try to just see how it works for you. You know, you'd be surprised. A lot of people are willing to help. A lot of people are willing to say yes. And, you know, it's important that we help each other. That's what it was back in the day. When we look at our ways of life, when we look at the way of life today, we help each other. I have neighbors coming over and, you know, hey, can we use the hose? And I'm like, yeah, take the hose. You know, cousins asking, hey, can we borrow the rototiller? Yes. You know, or like Jesus said, right? Offer your land, offer your own help. I mean, you know your own boundaries, but, you know, if you have the capacity to do that, why not? If you have the capacity to go help your little sisters or your brother or your older sisters, do that, you know, because it just really shows who you are deep down inside. And it comes from a place of not wanting anything, but it comes from a place of you really truly wanting to help and be that person. And so it's good to, you know, just really show up for yourself, show up for others. And, you know, it's just really showing up physically, spiritually, and emotionally too. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for answering the questions. I have like all kinds of wheels turning. I really wish that Beata and Lillian could have joined us, but I think it might have been a mishap with the Zoom link, and who knows. But we'll definitely still keep an eye out for them. I know they have a lot of wonderful things to share as well when it comes to these questions and these thoughts. But yeah, thank you both for answering those questions. I will ask one more question and then we can take a short, maybe 5-minute break for folks. It's so beautiful to hear you all speak today. I was also thinking about that piece of asking for help, right? Today, I planted some chili seeds. I really wanted to do some starters because I've never done those before. I've always just like borrowed some or bought some. And so I was like, I'm gonna try this year. So I tried it, and then I told my dad, I'm like, I can't, like, I would have to get water from the sink and like water them every day to take care of them. So I was like, if I plant them, will you water them? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he did, and they're growing. They're like this tall, the chili. So I'm gonna transplant them in the field soon. But yeah, that asking for help, right? And internalizing the idea that we don't have to do it all, even though, you know, when you get into the swing of things, it feels like you want to or that you can, but as I've learned, you can't. um, so switching gears a little bit, thinking about, you know, how this work relates to our relatives, our plant relatives, our water relative, and just the land itself in the state of New Mexico. I think a lot of us are feeling climate chaos right now with the fires going on and the temperatures being very high, and just the, you know, what it means to live in this time of, you know, balancing being outside, not being outside, to take care of our health, you know, balancing how we take care of our health when the smoke is, you know, bothering our lungs, and we know COVID also impacts our lungs, impacts our health, and on an all level basis. Just thinking about that makes me think about how in this work are we related to the water crisis and the climate crisis, and what that means for us as Pueblo women and Pueblo communities. So I don't know if that's a question, but maybe, yeah, if you can share that connection between climate crisis, water crisis, and this work as Pueblo farmers, women farmers.
Yeah, Chastity, I think that's a great uh, thought for discussion. Maybe that's what it is. It's, you know, our thought for discussion. I'll say that in the time when I was younger and watching my father plant during his time, his lifetime, I never quite understood. My father used to keep track. There, he had this outbuilding that was kind of like his shed. Before there was the concept of a man cave or a man shed. There was this. He had this tool shed, and he often used to sit there and watch his. From that vantage point, his fields and his gardens from there. But what I didn't realize that what he was doing until much later is on the frame that goes around the door. He was noting in pencil, marking dates of when the last frost was, or when the last rain was, or any significant thing that he thought was worth capturing on that frame. And in his mind, and over the years as I watched him, I think the thing that stood out to me most was, and as a young child, you pick up when your parents are angry or frustrated. And I remember instances when the rains didn't come, or when the grasshoppers were in such numbers that they would wipe out entire fields. And I remember my father storming into our house, throwing down his hat and swearing, because he was so angered by the fact that all of his investment, the hard work that he and my mother had placed into these fields, was now gone. And I didn't understand that until I started to garden and farm myself, that we are part of this environment in a way that we depend on the rains to come. We depend on certain cycles to occur in a timely fashion that tell us when to plant. And that when those things are in a state of imbalance, that it affects how we plant, when we plant, and the kinds of yields that we can expect. And I think even for us this year, which is the first year in the years that I've been planting, we scaled back because we knew last year that we were already in a deficit statewide, but really where our village is located in that kind of western side of New Mexico, that we were in such a pattern that the ground was completely dry. We knew this spring that the winter snow had not come, and we already knew that the monsoons from last year weren't to the degree that would have replenished any kind of water deficit that we had. My partner and I generally plant a large family plot that would belong to his side of the family, in addition to the fields and the gardens that I tend. And this year we made the decision not to plant those large family fields as much as we wanted to, because it was too dry and too hot. And because we knew there was a risk that we would lose the potential yields if the rains did not come, we scaled back how much corn to plant so that we would have enough seed stock left from this particular corn that we were planting. This was blue corn that we're planting this year. And that's the first time that we've had to make those hard decisions. But it's not going to be the last time. And in my father's time, and I'm certain in ancestral times, they too had to make those hard decisions of how much to risk in planting. There's risk in farming and tending to fields. That's where prayer comes in. We know there's inherent risk in putting, trying to figure out what kind of season it's going to be. But that's where faith comes in. It's the two things that work together: faith, hope, prayer, along with recognizing that risk. But we can't separate ourselves from those issues of climate change, of drought. It's all intertwined. And I think for women and individuals, our community members who practice farming or some other activity tied to the land, like raising livestock or tending to those things that take us out into the mountains, like hunting. We notice those changes more so than people who don't, because we know that the forests are drier. The wildlife is coming out of the mountains. They're coming down to the fields, lower elevations. We just had reports not too long ago of herds of deer near our local community level because they are coming to get the water. I remember droughts in my childhood where we had a mountain lion that actually came to our cornfield. We were so excited to see the footprints in the damp earth. But we also know that the only reason why large game comes down to our fields is because it's so dry in the mountains. And even though our corn is coming up well right now, we recognize that rabbits, because there's no grass this year, because of the drought are coming to our fields, and we recognize that we will lose a percentage of our fields and gardens because the rabbits also need to eat, they need to survive. And so for those of us who are tending to things of the land, we recognize the direct connection that climate change is having on us. And so it makes us also, I will say this, the strongest advocates for water conservation, land conservation, stronger policies addressing climate change, and urging leaders to put those things in place to get us off that dependency on oil and gas. So all of those things are intertwined. And I think the best advocates, the strongest voices for that kind of change comes from our women. So I would encourage our women, our community members to join in that kind of advocacy. Thank you.
Definitely. I really like that. Get involved, right? That's really a good question. How do we prepare for and be in relation with climate and water crisis in our work? Wow. Well, you know, I really feel like Pueblo people and just us humans have been adaptable. We've been, you know, adaptable with changing climates for a while. I feel like, you know, some of the stories that we've had, or that we hear, some of the stories that I've heard of the past, and the elders, and, you know, a drought that they've been through, and like what Theresa said, you know, really relying on our faith and prayer, right? Because that's really important. To acknowledge that. And so to this question, you know, I really do feel like, wow, climate change we're seeing it firsthand, and we really are experiencing it. We're seeing it with our water, with the water scarcity that, you know, farmers are having to really cut back on, and also just seeing these big corporations coming in. They're taking so much of our resources, of our natural resources. And so when it comes to these types of relationships with our climate and our water, I think we have to remember that again, right, we're nature's kinship. And when we remember, and when we start to remember who we are as far as the kinship, we share all of these resources with animals, plant life, our water, of course, you know, everything, every living microorganism that's out there, we share these resources. And so to prepare for something like this, I think we really need to become more conscious about how we're utilizing these resources. And we are seeing these, we're starting to see these organizations, these nonprofits go out there and really fight, you know, and really stand up to these big corporations and to the government, to fight for what we know is sacred, to fight for what we know we protect. Because without water, without land, without air, we cannot sustain. And for us to be where we're at this point in time, I think we need to be more conscious about the footprint that we're leaving our future. What are you currently doing? What are we currently doing? Be the change. Right? So get involved. And in order for us to be that change and to adapt and to really look out for our future, we have to look at our footprint. What are we doing right now? What are we doing? Are we wasting water? Seriously? Are we just, you know, wasting water on whatever? Because there's no consequences to what resources are really being wasted. And so again, when we become more conscious to who we are and the resources that we utilize, then we start to say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a new way that we can do this. And this is where true innovation starts to happen. How I would like to see each of us really deal with this is to come to our communities and really say and look at the needs of the people, the needs of our nature, the needs of everything that we have, and really be like, okay, how can we truly save these resources? How can we really truly do that? And I think it's through renewing. We have to come to a place where if we're utilizing, let's give back. So with water, water's tough, you know, because water is, we use it for everything. But I do really feel like if we had, if you know, the developmental for houses, right? If they could actually like I don't know, restructure those and make it more beneficial and more sustainable for us, you know, where our watershed could go into our lands, into the grass, into certain things. If we can reuse our water, I think those are ideas that we can come up with for our future. And so the relation really with climate and where we're at is our consciousness. It's that, to me, that's just where I see it at, you know, how much are we responsible for utilizing these resources? How much are we responsible for wasting them? And how much are we going to step back and say, hey, you know what is my footprint? What am I leaving to the future? And how can I, you know, prepare? And also, how can I save? How can I renew? What can I do now to help, you know, regenerate? Because that's where we're at. We need to regenerate. We see this, we're just seeing too many things going on with extraction, with all of the resources that are being utilized. And that's the biggest warning right now, I think, you know, is if we really think about sovereignty and we think about our mother, is she really sovereign? Is our earth mother, is she really sovereign? She's not. Why? Because we're extracting, we're taking, we're destroying certain parts of her. And so true freedom is letting her live, letting her restore, letting her regenerate. It's like ourselves as women. You know, we have the freedom, we have the voice of our own bodies to speak what is right and what is wrong. And it's the same thing. If we're going to allow somebody to cross boundaries with ourselves, do we really have sovereignty? Are we really voicing our sovereignty and our opinions? No, we're not. And our freedom, we're not. You know, and it goes back to how we see our Mother Earth, because that's really, we live here, we're in unionship with her. And I feel really strongly about that, because that was something that I was taught when I was young, through all the teachings from my grandparents, my dad, you know, they all held roles here, religious roles, and they always talked to the importance about the resources, the acknowledgement. Are we acknowledging these resources? You know, it's not, we don't just worship them, right? Or whatever people say, paganism. No, it's an acknowledgement of our deities. It's an acknowledgement of our water. We're thanking them because we know how important it is. And I think that's where the relationship has diminished for some of us. You know, we don't see how precious our breath is. Our breath is air. Our breath is this air that we get to breathe every single day. Taking a deep breath that's a gift. Why? Because it's life. And so when we start to see ourselves as more than just, you know, we have to stop seeing ourselves and judging ourselves as just people. We're more than just people. Like I said, we are more than that. We're nature's kin. You have a purpose. I have a purpose. We're here because we knew the importance of what our ancestors and our elders had sacrificed for so long, and their wisdom and teachings, that they knew those instructions from the very beginning. And we have become conformed by the world, by the social cultures that are out there that aren't even us anymore. We are the land stewards. We are the water protectors. We are those that are here to protect what was given to us, this life. And so Get involved, be the change, be that change. We can say, oh, I want change, but what are you doing to be the change? What are you doing to get out, to voice and to exercise your right, and to exercise your sovereignty, and to exercise who you are? It's more than just saying that. So get involved, please. I would love to see more food storages in our communities with this climate change. I would love to see more water storage, water filtration being utilized in our pueblos. Why? Because we don't know if these resources are going to be safe for us in the future. So if we start practicing food storages, and we have a place where we can have 2-3 years of food to provide for our communities, that's great. That's what we did back in the day. They had 10-15 years of food saved to provide for their people, to provide for our people. And again, with the water storage, we're seeing water going so quick, but what are we doing to capture this water? What are we doing to even filtrate it? What are we even doing to try to reuse it? We're just letting it go. I think this is where we have to this is where we as individuals come together to work together, so that there are innovative ways, so that we can bring these ways into our communities, so we're not left behind. Technology, of course, is big right now, but could you imagine all of the beautiful insights and wisdom and technical knowledge that our ancestors had? Why? Because they asked. Why? Because they took the time to sit with our Creator, with our Mother, and they asked the questions. They gave themselves. We have people who sacrificed themselves so that we have a harmonious life. But we don't always see that, and we take life for granted. We don't accept life as a gift. We sometimes accept life as a hardship. Life's a gift. It's precious to be here today, right now. Your life means something. Your family's lives mean something. The animal lives mean something. And so together, let's make a difference together. Get involved. Be that change. You be the change. Step up. I know it's hard. It's hard to sometimes sit behind and be scared. Don't let fear take over, because fear is what is going to distract you to do something other than what you really truly love. And if this is your calling, if this is where your heart is at, don't let fear take over that. Stand up to fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawa, and to you both for those beautiful answers and giving us a lot to think about, and giving us a lot to, how to understand the personal motivation to keep going, right? To keep living, to keep doing this work that contributes to, I think, the health of our people and the health of our land. So yeah, lots to think about. While we transition into this break, I just wanted to share a short story. When I was talking to my dad earlier, I asked him the same question in preparation for this, and he just told me, he's all, yeah, I planted one year when it was really hot, and the plants just slept more during the day, and in the morning they're awake. And I was just like, oh, sometimes just simple as that, the plants just need more sleep in the day. And then I was like, well, did they all still grow? He's like, yeah. He's like, but there was challenges, and we just adapted to that challenge in the summer when it was really hot. But yeah, sometimes I get all like up here, like nervous and anxious and sad, and have a lot of mental health issues when it comes to thinking about the future with this work. And then sometimes my dad just simplifies it, and he's like, they just sleep more. And I'm like, okay. So with that, I will transition into a 5-minute break. I know it's been over an hour that we've been sitting here, so feel free to turn off your cameras, panelists, and then the next portion, I'll go into a couple more questions, and then we'll get Q&A going from the audience. So take a break. Okay, hello folks. You would like to rejoin us? Hope you all got a little stretch in and some water. The clouds are starting to roll in here in Acoma. Hopefully it gets cloudier. Okay, welcome back everyone. If you all can join us again. So I just have one more question and then I'm gonna open it up to the audience. And when I open it up to the audience, I would like to invite another Pueblo woman, farmer, gardener, seed keeper, from the audience, if you feel called to, speak on the questions that will be asked, just so we can get more people. Yeah. So my next question, thank you all so far for all the beautiful things that you have shared and important things you've shared. I think for me, as again, a young person in this work, I'm always curious to learn from fellow friends and community members, their ways of farming and, their practices, but also the faith and everything that comes with it. And so I think a lot of folks are also curious what this work actually looks like in the Pueblo. So however you want to answer that, I'm just always curious. I always have this dream of like driving to each Pueblo and just learning from a Pueblo woman farmer there. So yeah, just in that spirit, or in that, thinking what does it look like in our Pueblos?
Oh, that's a big question. You know, I don't remember in my younger days going up to my grandma or any one of my female relatives and asking them directly to teach me about farming. I think most of our teaching was shared by observation, by watching them in the fields, watching them in the orchards as they gather produce to make other things, in the act of harvesting and being voluntold that we were to help with the harvest. It was our parents telling us to go help your grandma, go help your aunties, they're shelling corn. There was always something that needed to be done. And that act of being an active participant creates those environments in which we learn, in which we build community. It was in the act of making tamales for preparation for feast day, in understanding what made the best corn husks to make tamales with, right? Or which ones you set aside for other purposes, and you kept the wide ones because grandma could put her masa in there and make really good tamales with those. Or understanding in the act of harvesting fruit, what fruit was good for drying, what fruit was good for sharing with others, and what you didn't do was waste, even that fruit that fell off the tree to the ground, or maybe was bruised or pecked at by a bird. You took that fruit and you prepared it in a way that you could store it, you could make jam, you could dry it. And even even when certain fruit was too far gone, you offered it up. In this case, because my father had sheep, offered it to the sheep so they even got a taste. There was no waste that was occurred. Those are, and I hear people talk, even because my mother and my grandmother and my aunts were all potters. It was never a direct question to say, teach me, I'm ready to learn. It was just by observation, by participating, by helping, by being of service to them, saying, can I get you this from the field? Can I get you this from, the garden? What do you need me to do? Offering ourselves up in that way is how we learn. And so those traditional environments that are conducive to learning, I think, is what that begins to look like traditionally in our Pueblo communities. And as Janice was talking about earlier in one of her earlier points, was it's in those environments that language learning occurs, that the sharing of our traditional stories, of our Pueblo values, of the things that are important to us occurs with whoever we are doing this work with. And so in the sense of this work of Pueblo women who farm and garden, it really is the act not only of planting seeds in our garden to generate the eventual food or crops that will sustain our families, but really what we're doing is reseeding and regenerating those things that create community, those things, those environments in which all that Pueblo knowledge, the skill, the language, our traditional stories, our prayers, our songs, as you, Chastity, indicated that your own father shared with you, those things that make us who we are as Indigenous people or Pueblo women are the very things that bind us together as community. And so it is more than just the act of putting seed into the ground. It is the act of continuation of everything that our ancestral grandmothers gave to us at the very time of emergence, that we are continuing on the creation and the continuation of our communities, our clan groups, our societies, our Pueblo world. Those are the things that become the foundation then for all of our children, our grandchildren, that's tied to when we talk about resilience, when we talk about language, the strength and health of our language, when we talk about identity, being able to be in good health, mental health, spiritual health, physical health, all of those things that we wish for our children to be able to address the most pressing issues that our communities will face in the next 100 years. That act of farming, of gardening, is everything that will hold us together as Indigenous communities. And so I think for me, that's what I see, that's what I hope for, that's what I pray for. And that's why I get excited when I have a young person say to me, can I come plant with you? Can I come help you? Can I spend time in the garden with you? Or even if they say, can I help you pull weeds? I'm not gonna say no. Because in that time that we spend together, hopefully we are passing on those gifts, that wisdom, that knowledge. And it's also with the prayer that one day when it's my time, when my journey ends here, that the next generation of young people, whoever, and I said this one time, I said, we plant in these fields and we say the names of all those who planted in these fields and those gardens that came before us, in the hopes that one day when our time is done, that our children, our grandchildren will say our names and remember everything that we have taught. That is the biggest hope, the biggest prayer. And if that occurs, then we know we've done our job. So in terms of what does that look like for our Pueblo communities and building and retaining those traditions, that's what we talk about when we say resilience, building the resiliency in our indigenous communities. In a nutshell, that's what that is. And when we talk about taking back our power, we use terms like to rematriate, or we talk about sovereignty, but those acts of planting, of farming, of gardening is all of that together. All of that together combined with our prayers, that's power. And so as women, and I get excited by this, as women, especially in today's society, when you hear so much messaging from the outside in the external world, that you're not good enough, that you're less than, that you have no power, that you have no place in these spaces dominated by men to speak. That act of planting, of placing your prayers into the land, of harvesting, all of that is power. It gives you the foundation to be able to do things that people tell you you can't do. That's power right there. And if you can do those simple things, then in any one of those places where you're being told you can't, your power comes from that very core place that our grandmothers did at that time of emergence, to say, yes, you can do, you can speak, you are worthy. And that in essence is power. And so I offer that up to the group, to the participants, to take those, and when we think about what does that look like in our Pueblo or indigenous communities, that to me is fundamental to everything that we do.
Man, that was powerful. That was very beautiful, Theresa. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I mean, that was well said, beautifully said. I just love your words and how you put that. I mean, it resonates so much with me. And I believe where we're all at right now with where we see each other, you know, in this time, in this space, and to just really feel what Theresa has, you know, echoed. I mean, that was very powerful. And I love how, I mean, look at this beautiful Pueblo woman right here who just she gave us a gift. This is a gift. Our words are gifts. And we take this, and that's why it's so important to learn from those that our grandparents, our sisters, those who we look up to, learn from each other, learn from one another. It's not about jealousy. It's not about competition. This is about love. This is about acceptance. This is about the kinship between each other, to respect one another, to lift each other up. We're not here to compete. This is not what this is about. We're at a place now where we see how important it is to have family, to have friends, to have people who care and love for you. And I just really love what you said, Theresa. Thank you so much, Hatkam. And these are the ways of life when you really think about it. These are the ways of life. This is what we've been taught. This is what has been in us. It's in us. We have to remember who we are, who we're called to be, who we need to be today for yourself, for your family, but mainly for you, because it's important to find your path. It's important to know who you truly are, because like Theresa said, you have the power. Only you have the power. I can't walk in your shoes. Your story is your story. Your experience is your experience. Your voice is your voice. Use that to change the world. Use that to inspire and motivate each other, love one another, say good things to each other. It's not hard, because remember what I was taught, my te'apai, my grandpa, I loved him so much. And he loved everybody, and he was a well-known man here, and he was so humble. And I see people today and they still come to me and say, you know what? Your te'e was so kind and he was so loving and he always welcomed us in. This is what humanity is. We don't see each other on the physical sense. We shouldn't see each other here and what we have. See each other beyond that in here, because each of us have something beautiful to offer each other. Beautiful. We all have these beautiful gifts that we came with. And it's the journey that you take when you go within to find out who you truly are, whether that's gardening, whether that's whatever it is that brings you happiness, whatever it is that brings you hope, whatever it is that brings you healing. Do that, because that's how you're going to be and find out who you truly are. There's so many different doors within yourself, and there's so many different keys to unlock those doors. So I'm so grateful. Hadkem mawamba'i. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And I just really am so honored to be in your presence, to share what I know, what I've been taught, and just know that, my garden is open. We're here to teach each other. I love having children at the garden. I love my kids being there. I love seeing my family being there. It's so much joy. My dogs, I love my dogs, and they're so happy. And just think about the things that make you happy and be real with yourself. That's where it's at too, in order for us to grow, in order for us to evolve. Our grandparents and our ancestors, they knew. Why? Because they were connected. They meditated, they sacrificed their bodies. We had ceremonies, we have songs, like I said, we have different things. We have our plant life, our sisters and brothers, our animals that we still call on. Why? Because they're helpers to us. That's what our mother gave us. And for us to continue to have a relationship. There's no relatability to food right now. There's no relatability to the land. Why? Because there's no relationship. And when you don't have any relationship, then you're a taker. Then you're extracting and you're taking and you see all these things, but what are you doing to give back? What are you doing to be in service? Like Theresa said, to be in service is so important. Not to have to put that on show. No, you be in service because you love people, because you love your community, because you love the land. And whatever service you can be, you be that. You invest in those things. And Hadgam, again, just for this opportunity. Theresa said a lot, and you know, these are the ways of life. This is our way of life. This is our Pueblo way of life. And our way of life is to teach us communion and connection to each other's. Again.
Thank you both. I'm so happy. I don't know another word to describe it. I just feel happiness inside of me. Thank you both for being here. And I'm very certain that everybody here feels that same happiness and hope and faith and joy. I think a lot of times we forget that peace in work, right? That there is so much joy that keeps us going in this work. And it's those smiles, and it's that the laughter and the promise of, I think, just a beautiful future that our ancestors, the people, the Pueblo people, the Acoma people that came before us really cultivated for us. And, you know, then we're the ones to carry it on, as both of you have beautifully shared. Yeah, I wish I could say so much more, but I am going to process and write it down and share my thank yous with you both. And trying to also facilitate. I had mentioned that I would open it up to the audience, and we are coming on 7 o'clock here, and I want to respect everybody's time. So I will open it to the audience and ask a question, or let one question be asked, and then both of you could feel free to answer, and then we will close up. And yeah, Christina, I had asked if you wanted to join us, because I know that you facilitate other young Pueblo who farm in Santa Fe as well. So if you wanted to join, you can in the answering of this question. But yeah, I will open it to the audience, and just whoever, maybe we'll prioritize a native woman in answering the question, or asking a question, sorry. So I'm asking a question from the audience, if that makes sense. If anyone wants to ask a question.
So Emily put in the chat, how can this work help when experiencing lateral violence in our communities? This is a challenge I'm currently experiencing. I love my cousins, but I wish they loved themselves. If Janice or Theresa want to chime in and answer that, or Christina.
Yeah, I know, Chastity, that you invited Christina. I'm not sure if she has some thoughts that she would like to share.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for including me. I mean, there's so much I could say. I really just want to thank all the wonderful women speakers, very inspirational. I found myself tearing up on more than one occasion. With regard to Emily's question, I think I think a lot about lateral violence in our communities, what we experience as Native people, and that legacy of trauma, but also the legacy of resilience. I know for me, having not grown up in my pueblos and spending a whole life, my whole lifetime, going to the Pueblos, but not until I was an adult living in my Pueblos of Jemez and Taos. I have experienced lateral violence very deeply and in very interesting ways. And unfortunately, that violence has often come from other women. And it's challenging. I think that there's been times where I've just wanted to back off and not push forward in being on the Pueblo. Sometimes being on, I'm more than one Pueblo, but there's been times I've stepped back because I don't know that it's sometimes it feels harmful and unsafe. But of course, as Pueblo people who are connected to our land, I've always come back and forth my whole life. And as an adult, I live in Santa Fe. I'm close to both of my Pueblos, but I do live in the city. And maybe it's a personal resolution, like a constitution that I have, but I feel like one thing that I always go back to is I feel like people are fickle. People may be cruel. People may have trauma-informed behaviors, but who always recognizes me is the land. The land always recognizes me. My mountains always recognize me. And so that has allowed me, and I know that I have a place. I know that I have a right to be home. And so that's like when I pray, I'm always praying for that remembrance and awareness of that memory that's in my blood that gives me the fortitude to keep trying and to keep working to be a part of my communities. I feel like I've spent my whole adult life working to have and reclaim space. And, my family was a product of relocation. So there's those of you who's had those impacts of those generational impacts of boarding school and then relocation, there's just this, I personally have spent my whole adult life trying to reestablish myself in community. And yeah, that's one thing. So I would say to Emily, just, pray to the land, pray to all the spirits and the ancestors. Your ancestors also recognize you as well. So don't forget that. And when you pray with your cornmeal and when you put your prayers down, always remember the land that knows you. The water recognizes you, the mountains recognize you, the trees, all of that recognizes you. And for me, that's really helped me to like see beyond the bigger picture of people's trauma, right? We're trauma-informed people. And with regard to that, we do have a community farm in Ogapogue, Santa Fe, through my work with Three Sisters Collective and through the work of the collective, we've managed to somehow inherit a farm. And you may have heard of us through our activism work, but really, I believe the front lines right now is the farm. Farming is my new front line. And so we have a youth program this summer. We have 5 youth involved, all Pueblo youth who live in the city of Santa Fe. So really taking into consideration all of us Native folks who are living in cities who are also wanting to connect with the land and reconnect in that way. Our farm is located in a former Tewa Pueblo, a pre-colonial Tewa Pueblo, known as Pindi Pueblo, Turkey Pueblo. And there's archaeological evidence there of hundreds and if not thousands of years of not only farming along the river, but turkey cultivation. So our people were, the Tewa people were at the Pueblo there were doing large scale production of turkey, probably trading and whatnot. And so through the county and other nonprofit organizations and our brother we're a grassroots organization. Our brother organization is Alas de Agua, another organization in town. We managed to, and this is a perfect example of allyship and how that could work with within larger communities and cities. We've managed to partner up with the Santa Fe County and local nonprofits and kind of strong arm the city to give us underutilized land in Santa Fe and Ogapogue. And we have, our farm is the second year that we've been kind of fully in production. And this year we were able to obtain a grant to have 5 Pueblo young women farmers. So if anybody would like to come visit our farm in Ogapoge, we've had some water issues. We don't have direct access to water. We have a solar water pump and a cistern that's been giving us some issues. We work with a farm across the arroyo, and they have a well. So we're kind of siphoning water from them. I don't know how sustainable it's going to be in the long term, but we're hoping we can get through another season and reconfigure. And another thing we also have is intersectional days, because I think as Indigenous folks and people, part of our work now in this new Indigenous futurisms that we're creating is to help our non-Native brothers and sisters get up to speed and learn to reconnect with the land as well. So as we learn and we extend that kinship and love to our non-Native folks who have settled in our communities and around our communities, because I still think of Santa Fe as an Indigenous community in spite of it being a city. And in spite of it being, heavily colonized, but we have so many folks who are also yearning for something bigger and learning to have a connection to place. So a part of our work involves intersectional work with non-Native allies and creating that kinship so that we can all heal and learn to reconnect with our original mother. If any of you would like to come visit our farm, Full Circle Farm in Old Agua Fria Village, formerly Pindi Pueblo, get in touch with us, threesisterscollective.org. You can find us on social media too. There's so much more I could say. There's a couple of the young women in our summer youth cohort who are also on this Zoom. So if any of the young folks would, I don't know if we have time, but if they want to chime in, it would be great to hear from a younger person as well, a younger Pueblo farmer.
This is just a setup, a plug to get everybody to come out to our gardens and farms to help us. That's the intent of this meeting. I'm just kidding. But the other kind.
Can I chime in to that last question by Emily? To build off of what Christina shared with the group, and I appreciate her words. I think in terms of lateral violence, when we talk about lateral violence in our communities, that the act of Pueblo women or Indigenous women, and I specifically speak from that experience of a Pueblo woman farmer, gardener, can be the strongest visual to our communities in reconnecting with those traditional values that support our matriarchal foundation. I know that in looking back in my adult years and in the work that I do, I have the ability to recognize in the work that I do in my career is being able to look at those things and separate what is truly our traditional culture versus what came in as that colonized aspect or introduction of other values that are not traditional Pueblo values. The example that I gave earlier of Pueblo women farming, plastering, of maintaining homes, of the act of maintaining those things that were necessary for the family, and giving the example that was held by our women, that gave them power, that gave them the ability, because they were the managers, the decision makers when it came to our Pueblo households. It's just that over time, because we've been colonized, that we've allowed ourselves to think that farming, that fixing the home, maintaining the home is distinctly a male responsibility. We still ask in our Pueblo ways, as marriages occur, as binding families together, that the young man understands that he now will tend those fields on behalf of his wife, on behalf of his wife's family. That's his responsibility. That's part of his commitment. But it never indicated, and I say this because we just recently did this tradition between a niece of mine and now my new son-in-law, is that it was never, and it was explained to the young man that he owned those lands, but that this was part of an act of service by marrying our niece, that he would give in service to our family. But I think in terms of addressing lateral violence, if more of our Pueblo and indigenous communities farmed and gardened, especially with women, what more powerful statement could we have in saying this is what we choose, those values that are associated with that act? What more of a powerful visual could we have to say this as a community is what is important to us? Our women are important to us. These are safe spaces for our women where they can reconnect to the land, where they can reconnect to their power and reclaim voice, that we can reestablish, at least in the act that we do as Pueblo women in Acoma, to say that we are in service to one another, that our young men see themselves not as an opportunity to dominate, because that is a colonized value, but really to say, I am in service to my wife's family, to my sisters, to my aunts, to my grandmother. And that act of service is not to be subservient, but it is the highest gift that one can give to another human being, to say, I value you, I see you, I respect you. I'm willing to offer what I can to you to be of service to one another. That is the highest calling that we can have, is to be of service to one another. But it's because of colonization that we see examples of lateral violence and not even, and even beyond lateral violence, that comes into our communities, because those value systems have all been put out of place, out of whack, for lack of a better phrase. And until we address those systems that were meant to oppress, and we can look at examples in each one of our communities where women have taken that secondary role and it was meant to suppress us, then we must reclaim those places, those spaces, those environments, and those traditional acts that we have been born into, such as farming and gardening, to take our power back. And it is in those spaces with other women that then we begin to start to find solutions to addressing things such as lateral violence, to calling for leadership to listen to us, because now we have solutions. We are ready to reclaim our space. So Emily brought up a very good and powerful question, and one that can address so many issues in our tribal communities. And I too want to extend my gratitude both to you, Chastity, but also to the organization of Tiwa Women United. It's only in these spaces where we can have these critical discussions between those of us who are older and those of you who are younger and everyone in between, to say, how are we going to carry our communities into the next 100 years, into the next generations? Because if we can't do that now, if we can't come together to problem solve, then that is what is the most concerning to me. And it's discussions like this that provide us with solutions. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to Tiwa Women United for creating this space and for inviting me to share what little knowledge I have amassed in this lifetime.
Thank you. So thank you both, Christina and Theresa. I just wanted to add on to what Theresa and Christina are both saying, that, you know, addressing those systems of oppression, and really for me, my journey is addressing those within myself, right? Just what that looks like, that lack of, that mentality of scarcity, that mentality of I'm not enough, what I have is not enough. You know, really sitting with that and feeling where that comes from. I think that has helped a lot in my own healing, and not wanting to replicate, I think, violent thinking towards other people. And that occurs a lot within this work, is that personal and internal reflection that is important. And I loved what you shared earlier, Janice, when you said this is about love. That's just like, that sticks out to me a lot, because that's what this is, you know, just coming from that place of love and abundance. And yeah, just for our people and ourselves, and the land. So yeah, thank you all so much for sharing tonight. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us. I'm just sitting here. I can be on here for a long time. But if there's anything you would like to share with Janice, maybe you could close us here. And if there's any youth that want to chime in via video, maybe chat, that would be great. But yeah, that's all I have from me.
We would love to hear from the youth. If the youth is still out there, we'd love to hear. Yeah, speak up. This is your platform too. So, you know, we want to hear your experiences. And yeah, if you're out there, please.
All righty, so we're gonna be applying a summit soon. Let's do this. All right, thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you all have a good evening. And I wish you all a good rest of the weekend, and yeah, just drink your water. Stay hydrated. Have a good one.